And corporate workplace doesn't reward authenticity. It shies away from it. It's scared of authenticity. Hi, my name is Vicky. Welcome back to my channel. Today, I want to talk about burnout. If you've been feeling burnt out and you feel like maybe this is somehow your fault, that you didn't manage your work-life balance better, you needed to meditate more or be more mindful and things like that, I'm here to tell you that it is not your fault. I have a theory that corporate world burns people out. The very nature of what we do leads to burnout. And then, they have the audacity of blaming it upon us and saying that maybe somehow we need to be better, when really it is just a byproduct of, corporate work. So first, let's start with the definition of burnout. Burnout is a state of extreme physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion from prolonged excessive stress, often from work, but not always from work. I do believe there are caregiver burnout. And if you are a millennial woman who has young child or children, my theory is that most of us are on the brink of burnout. And this leads to feelings of being overwhelmed, cynical, helpless, and a loss of motivation and energy where one feels like they have nothing left to give. It's caused by prolonged stress, overwhelming demands, lack of control, insufficient rewards, unclear expectations, and a poor work-life balance. Does that sound familiar to any of you out there? It certainly was my life for the past, I want to say 1 to 2 years. I had a very severe burnout period where I physically felt like I couldn't get out of bed. I probably spent about a month just sleeping. It felt like it took me a long time to finally get the energy back, and I felt like I went from a high functioning person who was able to juggle, really demanding work as well as a young child and all the demands of having a modern life, to someone who was chronically fatigued. And if you've heard of the chronic fatigue syndrome, I don't want to say I didn't believe it, but it really took experiencing this extreme level of fatigue for me to go, wow, what a debilitating way to live. For many of us out there, I think we just think that this chronic feeling of being tired, being stressed is just life. Burnout doesn't happen in one day. It occurs over time. There are stages to burnout. You start out on the honeymoon stage of work when you're enthusiastic, you're optimistic, you're committed, you're ready to prove yourself. And then there's some stress that comes along with work, and you might feel some reduction in productivity. You might feel a little anxious. You might feel irritated. You might feel overworked. And usually we have creative adjustments to overcome these stressors. We might drink more, we might eat more, we might scroll mindlessly on our phone more just to get that extra dopamine hit. These things are creative adjustments. These things are necessary for us to feel like we still have control or have that extra, rush of sugar so we can power through another, 4 hours of work, things like that. Usually people can stay at this stage of stress for a long period of time. I mean, for myself, I knew that I stayed in that level of stress for probably years. And so then we go into chronic stress. And with chronic stress, you're going to have feelings of frustration. You might feel resentful of the people around you. So usually there is one precipitating factor that then pushes people from chronic stress into burnout. So during chronic stress, we feel exhausted, we feel really angry about the world, we feel frustrated, and we feel anxious, and all of those things like that. But we're using our creative adjustments, we're using our methods of coping to get us through the day. We might say to ourselves, this isn't exactly healthy. I've been drinking a lot more soda lately, but I need it to get through the day. And you can feel like, I've done it for so long. What's one more thing? And often those things will snowball. And then all it takes is the one extra little thing for you to go into burnout. And I want to say, especially for people that are creative or in the creative field, corporate work really kills our sense of identity, our sense of self, our sense of belonging, and it forces us to be numb. And one of the core features of burnout is something called depersonalization. Depersonalization is a key symptom and dimension of severe burnout, representing a deep sense of disconnect from your own identity, emotions, and actions, often feeling like a robot or watching yourself from outside. It is a coping mechanism where you emotionally detach from overwhelming work stress, leading to cynicism, lack of empathy, and reduced personal efficacy. Why does it happen? Well, it is a coping mechanism. I don't want to vilify it because it is something that our body, our minds naturally do to protect us from overwhelm and unmanageable stress and also disconnection from meaningful work. And how does corporate work lead to all of this? Well, for lack of a better word, corporate world does not value authenticity. And it starts at the moment that you start your job hunting. From like all of those posts on LinkedIn about CEOs and how amazing, their personal growth, yada yada, and all the things like that, to like people posting, I am so excited to start my journey with XYZ company. I can now finally find a sense of fulfillment. And you like read through it and you think, oh, what a load of crap. And you know that these people didn't care about these companies or these calls. Or I'm not saying all of them, but most likely the vast majority didn't care. And this is just all to put on a show. And that's all it is, to put on a show so that when employers now use LinkedIn to look for potential employees, they can see these posts and be like, oh, what a good worker bee you will be. So now you start corporate work. And I think everyone goes through a period where they are originally really excited by it. I know that in my 20s I was like, "Yay! Somebody wants to pay me for the work I do instead of, I don't know, me paying them to learn things." And it's so exciting. I'm finally getting my big girl jobs and things like that. Yes, I will do anything you ask. It's today, Spirit Day. Sure, I will come dressed up. And then, eventually you get to a point where you start to feel like, what is the point? What is the point of doing these things? But you're not allowed to show that. You're not allowed to show your questions. Otherwise, you're not a team player. You're not allowed to be like, do we have to say the word circle back one more time? If I hear the word circle back, I will tear my hair out. You're not allowed to say any of that. People have to adopt a work persona. And you hear that all the time, actually. There's a difference between work me and real me. But then the price of being on all the time is absolutely exhausting. We're not meant to be on and performing for other people all the time. And I asked my own therapist this. Why is it that acting and performing in front of like a crowd or filming something makes me so happy and excited, but going into the office and spending 8 hours performing essentially this work persona leaves me so drained and exhausted? And she said, Vicky, performing for other people is not the same as performing for yourself. When you are forced to perform for other people, to put on this show and dance, it is exhausting, it is numbing. And that's the truth of the matter, is that I had to numb parts of myself to be okay with this work. I had to pretend like I am happy and excited about work when I'm like, this is a third overtime that I'm doing. Why am I doing this? For whose sake? Or we're having yet another useless meeting, but we'll smile and pretend like I'm not mad at the fact that they the meeting has run half an hour over time, and yet everybody's still, one upping one another or patting themselves on the backs. And also, as human beings, we need the time to self reflect, to decompress. We need a certain amount of alone time. And that is especially true for creative people. Artists, creatives, we need our sacred space in order to recharge, in order to actually tap into the creative potential that's there. But when we are on all the time, our time is not our own. Instead, we're sort of being dragged along by other people's demands, and we couldn't actually listen to what our internal voices are saying. We're instead just always in a reactionary mode, reacting to the demands, reacting to the higher ups, reacting to the things that needs to be done by end of day, instead of actually searching for ourselves, what are the things that would make me happy. As human beings, we need meaning in our lives. We need to feel like we're in control. We need to feel like what we do is actually meaningful work. But where do we find that in the corporate world? The corporate world is scared of authenticity, has no place for it. Your authentic self has no place in the corporate world. And so we must adapt by numbing ourselves, by cutting away parts of our voices that says, what am I even doing here? What is the meaning of this? And why is it that nobody can speak the truth? Many of us are also dealing with unreasonable working conditions. We might have micromanagers, we might have unclear expectations, very demanding end of year goals. And I mean, people are saying that AI is going to take our jobs. Add that to the list of stressors. How else are we supposed to feel except stressed, anxious, depressed, overwhelmed? On top of feeling like there's a lack of control and agency over our lives, on top of feeling like what we do doesn't make any difference. And even if it does, who's to say we'll have this job tomorrow? Of course we feel drained. Of course we feel depressed. Of course we feel stressed. These things are byproduct of the system. They're not something you can just grit and grin and bear it and grind your way through. These things are systemic, and unless the system changes, I don't really see much of a way out for most people. Now, this video isn't supposed to be all doom and gloom. Hopefully you feel like you're being heard or seen in this video. Hopefully you feel like you're not alone. Hopefully you can stop asking yourself, what am I doing wrong? And really see that the system is unattainable even for the best of us. Thank you so much for watching. If this video has resonated with you at all, please comment. I will be sure to comment back. Thank you.